Welcome back to the Read and Discover series. In this third episode of our season, we're exploring biblical stories that speak to modern life. We're diving into a moment of radical compassion, quiet courage, and unexpected connection. Today, we try to answer the following questions. What does it mean to truly see someone? How can a simple encounter of a person with no status, no titles, and no filters change not just one life, but the life of a whole community? These interrogations bring us to the story of the Samaritan woman at the well. The theme behind this story is to see how to stop judging others and teach us how to open ourselves to new and surprising friendships. Before we start, let's take a quick minute to subscribe to follow this journey with us. Chapter 1. An unexpected encounter. Jesus didn't plan to stop in Samaria, at least not geographically. Most Jews would have taken the longer route around that region entirely to avoid contact with Samaritans, who were viewed as ethnically and religiously impure. But John 4 verse 4 tells us that Jesus had to go through Samaria. Spiritually speaking, Jesus had a divine appointment. He stops at Jacob's well around noon, the hottest, least social time of the day, and there she is, a Samaritan woman drawing water alone. Drawing water was communal. Usually, women went together in the morning to accomplish the task. The fact is that if she's coming at noon, it likely means she's been shunned by her community because of her past, and maybe even by herself. Then Jesus says to the Samaritan woman, "Will you give me a drink?" The question of Jesus is more than a request, it's a bridge. He, a Jewish man, is speaking to her, a Samaritan woman, in public and alone. That was scandalous. But Jesus doesn't operate by human social rules. He initiates connection, not separation. And the response of the Samaritan woman was skeptical. "How can you ask me for a drink?" In other words, she means, "Do you know who I am and who you are?" Jesus responds not with a lecture, but with an invitation. If you knew who was speaking to you, you'd ask him for living water. This response is a metaphor and teaches us that real friendship begins not with judgment, but with curiosity. Jesus offers not just physical refreshment, but spiritual renewal. Chapter 2. Knowing the reality and still loved. The conversation continues, and Jesus gradually reveals that he knows her life in intimate detail. Then he says, "Go, call your husband." And the Samaritan responds, "I have no husband." Jesus continued, "You are right, you've had 5, and the one you have now isn't your husband." This isn't an embarrassment moment. It's not about public shame. It's about personal truth. Jesus brings up her story, not to condemn her, but to liberate her from it. Jesus said, "I know everything about you, and I'm still here." In a world where being known often means being exposed, this kind of knowing is radically healing. Jesus doesn't flinch. He doesn't retreat. He simply stays, looks her in the eye, and lets her know, "You are still worthy of conversation, of dignity, and of hope." This kind of presence, unshaken by someone's past, is revolutionary. Most people would have avoided her. Even in Samaria, she was on the outside. But Jesus says, "You belong in this moment. You are not invisible." And suddenly, something begins to shift in her. She realizes she's not just speaking to a prophet. She might be speaking to the Messiah. Here, we learn that there is healing in being fully seen and still fully accepted. If this part of the story resonates with you, or if you've ever felt misjudged or isolated, tell us in the comments how you feel when someone's kindness helped you feel seen again, or if you've learned to see others with new eyes. Also, like, comment, and subscribe if you like what we tried to accomplish. Chapter 3. Dropping the jar. What happens next in the scene of Jesus with the Samaritan woman is one of the most poetic in the entire gospel. The Samaritan left her water jar and went back to the town. She literally came for water and forgot about it, because she had just tasted something more satisfying. But that jar wasn't just a clay pot. It was a symbolic one. It represented the weight she carried for approval, for the repetition of broken relationships, and the shame she tried to hide from the entire community. Leaving the jar behind meant she wasn't just walking away from a well, she was walking into a new identity. And here's what's wild. The Samaritan becomes the first evangelist in John's Gospel with no theological degree and no public following. She runs into town and says to the same people who had likely shamed her, "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be Christ?" Now she's inviting them to heal. That attitude showed us that you don't have to be perfect to carry a powerful message. You just have to be willing. Chapter 4. The Ripple of Compassion. The Samaritan woman's testimony wasn't polished. It wasn't eloquent, but it was real. John 4, verse 39 teaches us that many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. And that realness changed people. The Samaritan woman didn't wait to be qualified. She didn't ask permission. She simply let her life speak. For her, what began as a conversation at a well ended in a spiritual awakening for her whole town. Because someone, named Jesus, chose to break a social barrier and offer compassion instead of critique. And all because the Samaritan woman chose to respond, not with fear, but with openness. This story challenges us to ask, who have I dismissed based on assumptions? Who might surprise me if I listened longer? What new friendship is waiting if I put down my jar of judgment? Because when we listen, connect, and risk kindness, we don't just find new friends, we help heal old wounds. To conclude this episode, we can see that the Samaritan woman at the well wasn't just changed, she was restored. And she became a doorway for others to encounter that same grace. So, here's the takeaway. Don't underestimate the power of a single moment of kindness, or a conversation that begins with, "I see you." Please, like this video if the story moved you, and subscribe to follow the rest of the season. Also tell us in the comments, what's one label or assumption you're ready to drop this week, about yourself or someone else? Next week, we'll cross the sea with Moses and the Israelites, and talk about how miracles often come from the most challenging moments. Until then, stay grounded, stay curious, and keep discovering. Bye.